like Sanjeet said, the talk today is about demystifying cancer, all right? And it's busting all the myths that surround cancer and kind of getting to know a little bit about what cancer really is and what it actually means. So we're going to do this talk in a very informal way. Please feel free to stop me and ask questions during the course of the talk or after. Let's keep this as conversational and interactive as possible because I want all of us to, step away from this talk today feeling good and feeling empowered. So that's the whole idea. So the first question is, why should we know about cancer? Why is it such a big deal nowadays? The statistics are a little bit grim, So it's 1 in 9 Indians who are going to develop cancer at some point during their lifetime. That's the latest data that the Globocan has given our country today. And that's a little bit of a worrisome number. Very soon, cancer is going to be the leading cause of death in India. So if this is not reason enough, the most important reason, which I'd say why you should know about cancer, is because it's something that is completely curable, provided that it is detected early. And the only way we're going to detect it early is if we know about it and if we are free enough to talk about it. So let's begin with the most basic question. Okay, so what is cancer? Is it some foreign body which develops inside your body? Is it something that, like comes from out of nowhere? Actually, none of these. Cancer cells are actually just psychopaths. So if you see the normal cells in the human body, each of them undergo division, all right? So they divide so that there is growth. Now, if there is any problem in this division process and one of the cells become damaged, the body has something called a suicide mechanism to actually stop this damaged cell from carrying forward. Cancer is when this damaged cell goes out of control. It goes berserk and the body has no control over this damaged cell. So they are nothing coming from outside. They're very much, very, very, very similar to the cells of your own body, but they have just lost that little bit of inhibition and control that all other cells face. Here I'm trying to give you an overview about what is the problem that India is currently dealing with. So if you look at the graphs amongst the women, breast cancer has overtaken every other form of cancer that we are facing in the country today. And if you look at the males, the most common is lip and oral cavity, but the second most common danger lurking behind is lung cancer. And if you look at population that we are used to, that is the metro cities, it's actually breast cancer and lung cancer, which are the most common cancers seen amongst us today, and which is why we're going to talk about breast cancer in today's talk. Again, a few more numbers. So if you look at last year's data, okay, so 11.5 lakh Indians were newly diagnosed with cancer, and 7.8 lakh of these patients didn't actually make it. So there is definitely a problem here, and which is why we need to talk about it. Why is India in such a precarious position? So if you look at the cancer distribution, lip cancer, oral cavity cancer, cervix cancer, these are all so-called third world cancers. They're more common in the so-called developing countries rather than the developed nations. India has a lot of these cancers, okay, still. At the same time, if you look at Indian cities, the life you'd live in Bombay today is almost like the life someone would probably live in New York or Melbourne. So the problems of westernization are also coming in. So the cancers associated with them, like lung cancer or breast cancer, for instance, has a growing incidence in our population. So we are still fighting with the ghosts of the past. And at the same time, we have to start battling the problems of the future all in the present. So, that's why the problem that India is facing is really unique. So all of us would have had, relatives with cancer, some dur ka rishtedar who's had cancer, and these words have been thrown at us quite a lot. So I'm sure most of you would know something about each of these words in the screen. And I'm just going to kind of go through them so that we can understand the rest of the talk better. Please do interrupt me if you have any questions, even at this stage. So cancer, tumor, growth, malignancy, all these are interchangeable terms. They mean one and the same thing. Biopsy is actually a small procedure where you take a tiny bit from this lump to actually diagnose cancer, okay, to make sure that this is cancer. So the first myth that we're going to bust today is that a lot of people, even in the OPD, when we see patients, they ask us, "Acha, isme se aap tukda lenge? Usse ye phailega to nahi?" So the answer is no. Taking a biopsy from a tumor does not cause it to spread. In fact, without a biopsy, you wouldn't even know what you're dealing with. So it is the first step in understanding or even diagnosing cancer. A PET scan is a special form of a full body scan. It's something that when somebody gets diagnosed with cancer, they are advised to undergo a PET scan because it tells you whether your tumor is located to just one part of your body or is it spreading anywhere else. So that's why a PET scan is important. Metastasis is literally distant spread. So if a cancer spreads from one part of the body to another part of the body, it is called metastasis. Chemotherapy and radiotherapy are treatment modalities for cancer. So chemotherapy includes injections that you give through the veins, whereas radiotherapy is like radiation that you give to cure cancer. And finally, the term cure. So amongst us, the cancer community, if a patient has undergone treatment for his or her cancer and has been disease-free for 5 years, the chances of cancer coming back after 5 years is very, very low. So if the patient survives 5 years, it's a great milestone, and we actually call it a cure. Perfect. So now we've gotten our basics sorted out, and we'll come back to the topic for the day, that is breast cancer. So how common do you think breast cancer is in India? Anybody wants to take a wild guess from the options which are given here?
I think 1 in 8.
Yeah, so the second person is actually right. It's 1 in 28, but 1 in 8 is a very real possibility in the not very far away future. So the answer is 1 in 28. That is 1 in 28 women are actually going to end up having breast cancer at some point in their lives, right? So definitely it's something that we need to be talking about. And thoda sa isko aur if we make it sound even more dreadful, it's that every 4 minutes there is one woman who's diagnosed with breast cancer in India, and every 8 minutes one of them actually succumbs to it. So the problem is quite real.
Hey, doctor, I just wanted to ask, is the data like overall India, or is it only metro
No,
city?
this is only for India. The one that I'm talking about is only for India. The 1 in 4 and 1 in 8.
So this includes rural people as
Yes,
well,
it
right?
does. Yes, it does. But breast cancer, like I told you before, no, is more a problem in the cities today than in the rural areas because it's a lifestyle related cancer. So
Okay.
you wouldn't be wrong in saying that even in cities, this number does hold true.
All right.
Okay, so who can get breast cancer? Okay, so the answer is pretty simple. It's basically anybody who has a breast can get breast cancer. So obviously females are the most common people who have breast cancer, but that doesn't mean that males don't have it. We do see male breast cancers. Only thing is very, very rare. So it's 100 times less common than that seen in females. Now, speaking about our transgender community, how do they fare in all this? So if you take a trans female that is a genetic male who has undergone a transformation to a female, these are people who end up taking a lot of hormones. So again, hormones are a risk factor for breast cancer. So though they're genetically males, their risk for breast cancer lies somewhere in between males and females. Whereas if you take it the other way around, that is trans males, that is genetic females who have undergone a transformation to become males, their risk actually goes down because these are people who are going to end up having a bilateral mastectomy. That is, they're going to get their breast removed. They're most likely going to get their ovaries removed because ovaries are the ones that produce female hormones, and so their risk actually goes down compared to a normal female. Coming to the population, why we need to be worried and why we are talking about it today amongst our age group. Breast cancer is becoming increasingly common in the age group of 30 to 40 years, which is where all of us lie. And comparing it to something 25 years back, the incidence is almost doubled. And if you look at this graph here, almost all the cities which have cancer-based registries, the peak incidence is again between 30 to 40 years. So it's something that women like us are facing on a day-to-day basis, which makes it all the more personal. So the first question that anybody who gets diagnosed with cancer asks is, why does it happen? Why does the body suddenly behave like this? Sorry. So we've all heard that breast cancer is hereditary. Okay, so if someone's mother had it, aunts had it, sisters had it, there's a high risk that you're going to have it. And that is true. I won't say it's not true, but it's true only for 1 amongst 11 people who actually end up getting breast cancer. For the other 10, the reasons are slightly different. Now, there are some risk factors that you can't help, which you need to deal with. Okay, so like female gender, all of us were born like this, we can't help it. Advancing age, none of us are going to be able to stop it. If we have a family history, again, that's not something that you can change. At the same time, there are girls who get their periods very early in their lives, that is an early menarche, or women who end up getting their menopause very late in life. So these are people who get exposed to hormones for a very long duration of their lives. So even they are slightly increased risk of breast cancer. None of these are things that you can help or change. But there are some things that you can actually change. So overweight and obesity has been linked with breast cancer, which is something that you can very much, all of us can actually help. A lot of alcohol intake, again, kind of becomes a risk factor for breast cancer, which is not to say that you're not to have a drink at all. All of us deserve to enjoy a good drink, but we need to know where to stop. I think that's a problem for all good things in life. One more. And oral contraceptive pills. So most of us, or a lot of us, would go on these pills to avoid unwanted pregnancies, but we need to be a little bit careful about how long we use these pills, because again, using them for a long period of time increases the risk for breast cancer. And these are things that we can actually help. So what does breast cancer look like? All right. So I came across this very interesting picture which sums it up in one snapshot. So anything that makes your breasts look or feel a little bit different from normal could be breast cancer. So, it's probably, you can feel a lump inside it, or suddenly the skin over it looks different. There are dots, or suddenly a vein pops up, your nipple gets retracted, or you end up, getting some kind of nipple discharge, which you never had before. All of these could be symptoms of breast cancer. But again, they may not be too, because a lot of these changes, like your breasts becoming heavier, the skin changing over it, can also be a part of your normal menstrual cycle. So I'm sure all of us must have noticed that our breasts look and feel a little bit different as, like during our period, just after our period. So any of these changes, if we notice, we would be safe in going and visiting a breast specialist. So a breast specialist is generally a breast cancer surgeon, somebody who specialized in dealing with breast diseases. And if you go to them with one of these problems, they are going to do something called a triple assessment. So a triple assessment, the first component becomes your clinical examination, where the doctor is actually going to look at your breasts, feel them, see what problem you have, what complaint you've gone with. And they're also going to palpate for lymph nodes. Lymph nodes are tiny, tiny glands which are present around the breast in the axilla. That's the first step. The second step is they're going to do some form of imaging. So if the patient is somebody who's older than 40 years of age, they'll generally ask for a mammogram. But if it's someone younger, like if it's you or me, in our age group, mammograms are a little bit not that useful, because our breasts tend to be slightly denser. And for us, it's an ultrasound that is generally what's performed. And after that, what we'd already spoken about, it's either a biopsy or a fine needle cytology, which is like a biopsy, but with a smaller needle, which confirms the diagnosis. So putting these three arms together, we usually get a confident diagnosis in almost more than 95% of the cases. Now, once a patient has been diagnosed with breast cancer, the next step is to stage it. So all cancers are staged with numbers ranging from 1 to 4. 1 being good. So 1 means it's small disease, localized, not spread anywhere. 4 is the other extreme, which means that the disease has spread to distant parts of the body. All right. So how do you get this staging? You get the staging with the clinical examination that your doctor does, the mammo or the ultrasound. And if the tumor is slightly bigger, your doctor is probably going to ask you for either a CT scan or a PET scan. So this picture over here is the PET scan, which, a cancer just lights up like a light. So you immediately come to know whether it's limited to one part of your body or has it spread anywhere distally. So once you stage the lung cancer, depending on the stage, the doctor is going to plan out your treatment course. The ways that you can fight lung cancer is either with surgery or with radiation or with things like chemotherapy. Breast cancer is also very, very responsive to hormone therapy. And the newest kid on the block is something called targeted therapy, which is super cool. It's like absolutely tailor-made to kill only the cancer cells and nothing else. So the side effects with these targeted therapies are very, very less compared to other forms of therapy. So your patient is going to end up having a combination of one or more of these options as a part of their treatment for breast cancer. So, there's a large myth that goes around saying that, if you have surgery for breast cancer, it looks really horrid because they end up removing your whole breast and it looks so terrible. But that's not true anymore. Plastic surgery and breast cancer surgery has advanced in such amazing ways. Now, look at the pictures here, all right? The two breasts look completely symmetrical. You wouldn't even know that this patient's undergone a surgery for breast cancer, and that's how good surgery can be. In fact, even if the tumor is a little bit bigger and you do end up having to undergo removal of the entire breast for breast cancer, the plastic surgeons have found a way to recreate the breast using tissue from your own body. So it does not need to be disfiguring. It can be very, very aesthetic. And finally, the question that everyone's burning to ask, is breast cancer curable? And my answer to this question is going to be a resounding yes. But the key to curing breast cancer is to detect it in time. So if you look at this graph right here, if you end up picking up breast cancer in its early stages, like stage 1 or stage 2, 95% plus people are actually going to be cured. They're going to be rid of their disease. They're going to live long, normal, fruitful lives. So what can you do? How do you need to take care of yourself in this entire thing? So limit your alcohol intake, limit your smoking, try not to smoke. So, alcohol is okay, but smoking really, 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 really screws the system. Try and be physically active, try and work in exercise. I know easier said than done, all right? I'm telling you all this because I can, sitting at this end and giving you this talk, but it's important for me, for you, for all of us. We need to try and integrate a little bit of exercise into our day-to-day lives, get our weight a little bit under control, limit the hormones that you're taking. And for all the women out there, get your babies in early, breastfeed each one of them, because having babies early and feeding your babies is actually protective against breast cancer. And finally, eat a healthy diet. These are simple things that we can do which significantly decrease our risk for breast cancer. Now, finally, coming to screening for breast cancer. Okay, so what do you mean by screening? Screening is something that you do in order to detect a cancer before it becomes evident. So that means that if you pick up a cancer during screening, you're probably picking it up in a very, very early stage. In the United States, screening is actually a part of their healthcare package. It's a part of the National Health Program. So every woman who is between the age of 45 to 55 gets a yearly mammogram as a part of her breast cancer screening program. Those less than 45, it's optional. Those older than 55 are given the option of doing it less frequently. Now, unfortunately, like we discussed before, because India is grappling with so many more important issues, breast cancer screening is not a part of any screening program in India. But if you are someone who has a strong family history for breast cancer, like whether if your mom has had it, or your maternal aunt has had it, or your sisters have had it, or a lot of family members on your mother's side have had it, you need to have this conversation about screening with your healthcare provider. Screening is generally done with something called a mammogram. It's done on a yearly basis, and it's best started when you are 45 years of age or older. You may start at 40 if your family history is very, very strong. But I would not recommend a mammogram for someone who's younger than 40 years of age. Because, like we discussed before, younger than 40, the breasts tend to be dense. So, mammo is probably not going to pick up early cancers. So, what do women like you and me do, people who've not touched 40 yet? How do we screen for breast cancer? The answer is breast self examination. So, I was just going through the questions you'd put up for me today, and one of you'd actually asked about this. I'm glad you did, and I'm glad that you actually know about it. So, breast self examination is something that all of us can do. It's best done at least once a month. And the best time to do it is 2 to 3 days after your period, because that's when your breast has absolutely no hormone related changes, and you can feel any slight lump or change if it's there. You can do it in the shower when you're having a bath. You look at yourself in the mirror and examine your breasts. Now, all of this holds true if you know what your breast normally is like. So, to all the women out there, feel a little bit of self love, feel yourself up, get to know what your breasts are normally like so that you can pick up a little bit of abnormality and take it to a specialist if you think it is significant. Okay, so after everything that we can do to prevent, avoid, reduce breast cancer, I'm going to present a little bit of a grim statistic. Okay, so if you are somebody in the United States today and you get diagnosed with breast cancer, your chance of being cured and living a normal life is as high as 90%. But if you are an Indian woman who gets breast cancer today, your chance of being completely cured of it is much lower. It's at 60%. Why is this difference there? Now, you'll be surprised to know that the answer is not because the treatment is less in India. In fact, India stands head to head with the best in the world as far as surgery goes, or radiation goes, or chemotherapy goes. We have it all. There is nothing in terms of breast cancer treatment that you can get abroad that you can't get in India. So then why is this difference? The difference is because first, there is no screening. It's not very popular. And secondly, we are just too shy to talk about it. And, being shy, we're paying a huge price, man. Okay, so even today, we have very educated women who come to us in the OPD with huge lumps in their breast. And you ask them, where this must have been there for a long time. Why didn't you come earlier? And they say that, oh, I was just busy at home. I was busy with the kids and it never really hurt. Because, I'll tell you a fun fact, breast cancer is rarely painful. All right. So if you have a painful lump, I would say rest assured this is not breast cancer. So because it doesn't interfere with these women's day-to-day lives, and because they're shy to go and get their breasts examined or talk about their breasts, they end up getting detected really late. And that is the only reason why this difference exists. And this is something that we can all help by just talking about it. I have a question on the chat box. Okay, so Preena wants to know, can you tell us about vaccine for cervix cancer in India and its availability and cost? Thank you, Preena, for bringing this up. I'm going to make a mental note of this question and we'll come back to it as soon as we finish talking about breast cancer. And Prachi is tell a step-by-step self-examination that should be done at home for under 40. Prachi, I have my email ID at the end of this talk. So if you could just hit me up with it. We actually have videos which show you how you can get your breast self-examination done. And anybody else can hit me on my email and I'll be happy to share the video. Okay. Let's get back to this. Okay, so I'm going to go on to lung cancer after this for a tiny bit because November happens to be Lung Cancer Awareness Month. And I'm sure there are a few guys in the audience who are like, okay, yeah, why am I so worried about breast cancer? So let's get you also a little bit worried now. So before that, does anybody want to ask any more questions about breast cancer? We can do it. You can ask me even in the middle. Yeah, please go ahead.
Did you say in between that the painful lump is not breast cancer?
Yes. So a painful lump, so nothing in medicine is 100%, but a painful lump is very, very less likely to be cancer. So cancerous lumps are generally painless lumps.
Doctor, a lump in your underarm, but closer to your breast.
Mm-hmm.
A lump in your underarm, but closer to your breast. Like, is it something that we should be worried about?
So
Not
it is
exactly on the breast.
yeah, I understand. Exactly in the underarm area. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah, but closer to the breast. Yeah.
Correct, correct. So sometimes the breast tissue does extend in that direction. And like I said, lymph nodes from the breast go to your underarm. So I wouldn't say, I mean, call it serious, but it is significant. So if you think that there is a lump there, you should go and get it examined so that, at least you can stop thinking about it.
So, doctor, one question from my end. So, once a mammogram is done, is that like, is it valid only for a year, or like once in 2 years or 3 years
So
is good enough?
between 40 to 50 years of age, once a year is what the guidelines recommend, because that's the chance of you getting a breast cancer, which a mammogram picks up in your 40 to 50-year age group, is actually higher. Once you cross the 55 age group, you can do it less frequently, like maybe once in 2 years or 3 years. And less than 45 years of age, again, it depends. If you have a strong family history, go for it. But then if you are undergoing screening, then I would recommend that you do it on an annual basis, yearly, at least till you turn 55 years old.
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Yep, cool. Tell me.
Yes, I have a question. So I wanted to ask you about, I didn't see immunotherapy there.
Mm-hmm.
So when do doctors, prescribe that?
Right. So immunotherapy is, you can call it the new kid on the block as far as cancer treatment goes. And it has really, really changed a lot of things. But immunotherapy is something that is reserved as of today for cancer that is more advanced, like for cancer that is in stage 4 or which has spread to different parts of your body, and you have exhausted all other options. That is when you go to immunotherapy, because immunotherapy, though it works really well against the cancer cells, it also has a lot of side effects on your normal body tissue. And the second thing is it is prohibitively expensive. So to give you some perspective, a patient undergoing immunotherapy today ends up spending close to roughly around 8 to 10 lakhs per month. And there is no limit as to how many years immunotherapy needs to be given. It can go on. So that's where we are at today. That's why it's not something that's very routinely used. But yes, you are right, it is coming up in a big way, but more so in stage 4 and not so much in the early stages.
Okay. And there's one more question. So when is exactly the targeted therapy being recommended? So I'll just tell you about myself. So my mom has been diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer actually.
Right.
And
Right.
she's undergoing treatment. So her surgery has been done and the first phase of chemotherapy was given. Now the small doses of like 12 sessions of chemotherapy and the radiation has been suggested.
Right.
So, but the doctor said that he would diagnose again and would come to a conclusion if targeted therapy is supposed to be given or not.
Right.
So how will the doctor come to know about that? And can we take the chemotherapy sessions as targeted therapy and not chemotherapy?
Right. So the way I understand your case, chemo is a must. Okay. So if it's stage 3, you said, right?
Right.
Yeah. So chemo is a must. Targeted therapy is something that's an add-on to chemotherapy. So the doctor is going to test for something called HER2, all right, HER2 in the surgery specimen or the biopsy specimen that's been retrieved. And if this HER2 test comes positive, they are going to recommend targeted therapy, which is again a drug which has a very fancy name. It's called trastuzumab. It took me a lot of effort to get that right the first time. But so that's the drug that your doctor is going to recommend. And it's again something that's an injectable drug that is given as an add-on to chemotherapy, but it will not replace chemotherapy.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Okay.
Hello, doctor. So,
Yep. Hi.
So my question is if someone has asymmetric breast, is it a symptoms for breast cancer or is it normal? As
It's not.
in
So,
all years.
Asymmetric breasts, is very, very common. All right. So one breast might just be larger or smaller or slightly different looking than the other. It's absolutely normal. So what you need to be worried about is a change from what your breasts normally are. So again, re-emphasizing the point that to pick up a small change, first you need to know what your breasts normally look like. And I think today, one thing that all of us women on this platform should do is to stand in front of the mirror and just look at our breasts and know what they normally look like so that we can pick up a small change. And trust me, girls, I mean, we are the only ones who are responsible for our health at the end of the day. And it's in our hands to pick it up early.
Thank you, doctor. But one more question I have. Like, I have heard from someone like in periods we used to have some pain in our breast, but someone is having only one side of breast. Means, is it a common thing or?
Yes. So even this is something that is very, very common. Periods and the entire menstrual cycle involves a lot of hormones, and these hormones also affect the breasts. So it might affect one breast more than the other also. So that's nothing to be worried about. But if you feel a lump or if it's something that's slightly different from what you face on a monthly basis, just show someone. Don't keep it to yourself, is what I'd say. But it is completely normal. So even one-sided breast pain is normal.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, doctor.
Hi, doctor.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Please continue.
Yeah, thank you. Doctor, you said like we will have to go ahead for the self-examine so that's after 2 to 3 days of periods, right? So do you mean that once, maybe today is the first day and you said like second or third day is the examine right date, or once you're done with 6 to 7 days, after that then it is second or third day?
So the ideal time would be 2 to 3 days. So once your period, suppose your period starts today, then maybe day after tomorrow or the day after that would be the best time to examine your breasts.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So doctor, I was having, all of these things that we're talking about, like mammograms and all, are with respect to breast cancer. So is there any tests or scans that can scan your full body for any cancerous or tumorous cells?
So the answer to that question theoretically is a PET scan, because a PET scan is something that can pick cancer in anywhere in your body. But that's not how it's generally done, because then everybody would be, and a PET scan can come positive in a lot of things that are not cancer also. For example, infection can also light up on a PET scan. So it doesn't work that way. So we generally reserve a PET scan to stage a cancer once it has already been diagnosed. So we don't use PET scan like, अच्छा मुझे doubt है कि शायद हो सकता है तो चलो PET scan करके देखते हैं. It's not how it's done. It's you get a symptom or you get a lump, you get diagnosed with cancer, then a PET scan is done to know what the stage is and to know whether it's spread anywhere else in your body.
Yeah, hi, doctor.
Yeah, hi, tell me.
For the rest of the body, like you don't recommend any test unless and until you feel any kind of pain or lumps.
Absolutely, correct.
Oh.
Yeah, so
doctor,
what I was, should I continue?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, please.
Yeah, please continue.
Yeah, so apart from this, once you're 40 plus, apart from your normal self-examinations, once we go for these annual screenings, the blood tests and all, along with it, a mammogram is recommended 40 plus, or is it like only 45 plus what you were mentioning?
So 45 to 55, definitely. 40 to 55, 40 to 45 If you have a strong family history, so on your mother's side, so if you have your mother or your aunt or sisters who've been diagnosed with breast cancer, then you should start early. You should start at 40.
Okay. Apart from this, your normal, this other, like, the women as we face as in cervix, cervical cancer and all those. So a pap smear is something which will kind of give some kind of,
Yes. So again, a pap smear is something that your gynac is going to suggest, and she's also going to suggest that you visit her, at least once a year to make sure that your reproductive health is good after the age of 40.
Yes.
Yeah.
So after 40, so a mammo, if you have a strong history, and a pap
And
smear,
a pap
these
smear.
should be included in the
That is
annual
correct.
screening.
Yes.
Thank you. So pap smear again,
Right.
annual thing, as an annual thing should be done, or
Yes,
is it like
yes.
once in a few years?
Annual thing.
Okay.
And if it comes normal on 2-3 consecutive years, your gynac would be the best person to tell you if you want to do it less frequently. But generally, it's annual.
Thank you.
So doctor, can every painful or painless lump in the breast be an indication of cancer?
It could be an indication for cancer, but there are a lot of lumps, especially painful lumps, that come up in the breasts as a course of the normal, environment of the breast, which might not be cancer too. But I would suggest that if you do feel something that is different, let it be a doctor who makes this difference and not you.
So doctor, like my mother has had the history of.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of you go ahead.
I'll continue.
Please
then.
do. Please
So
do.
my mother has had a history of like painless lumps in past. So she has got them removed twice. It was not a cancer, but it was just a painless lump that was removed. So how susceptible my family members can be of, cancer in future?
So if it was not a cancerous lump and it was a non-cancerous or a benign lump, then it does not increase your family history at all. So your chances of getting breast cancer are not going to be increased just because she underwent, 2 lump excisions, which did not turn out to be cancer.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello, doctor.
Okay.
Hi. Hello, doctor.
Is it
Hi, am I audible?
Yeah, you are. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you. Tell me.
So I just wanted to inquire. My parents go for a yearly checkup. So will there be any test to detect if there's any cancerous cell in the body? Is there any test that they can get done?
No, there isn't. So, like I said before, there would be certain people, who sometimes advise a PET scan for this, but it's really wrong and shouldn't be done because it just picks up so many other things, and then you end up spending a lot of anxiety, resources, everything, just thinking about it when it's not necessary. So there is no single test, which is like a blood test or something that says ki haan, cancer hai ya nahi hai. It's not there. And different parts of the body ka cancer can kind of present in different ways. So it's best to not get too worried about it, but don't take symptoms too lightly, and don't ignore symptoms in the course of your day-to-day busy lifestyle.
Okay, so unless and until you face some kind of a symptom, you cannot get a test done.
You should not get a test done. And the second thing is, in answer to this question, there are certain scenarios where some people are high risk for certain cancers. Like we spoke about the high risk for breast cancer. Similarly, like if a person's been a heavy smoker throughout their lives, then they're at high risk for lung cancer, in which case they should discuss the option of screening for these cancers with their healthcare provider. So breast cancer and lung cancer are 2 cancers where screening is proven to be very, very beneficial. So if you fall into the high risk groups for these cancers, you should definitely have this conversation with your healthcare professional.
My paternal aunts, both of my paternal aunts had breast cancer. So am I also at high risk?
No, you're not. So paternal aunts does not put you at a very high risk for breast cancer. If it was maternal, it would have.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So, doctor, like we are talking about maternal genetics, right? But is
Right.
it likely that your paternal genes can also contribute to it? So, for example, somebody's grandmother has had cancer at some stage of her life. So, does that put you in a high risk category?
It doesn't, because the genes through which the breast cancer genes comes in, it comes in through your mother's side of the family.
Okay. And what about other cancers?
So very few cancers are, proven to be genetically transmitted. Very, very few. And even if they are, it's just the propensity for the cancer that is transmitted. It's not the cancer itself. So even breast cancer, if when you say that you have a family history, or you all might have heard of the BRCA, BRCA gene mutations, Angelina Jolie made it so popular. So even those doesn't mean that you're 100% going to get breast cancer. It just means that you have a very, very high risk for getting breast cancer. Actually getting the cancer needs one more trigger. Okay, so the one trigger becomes a genetic trigger, but it needs one more environmental trigger to actually make it happen. I don't know if you got that. So even though you have a strong genetic history, it doesn't mean that you're going to get cancer 100%. There's still hope if you kind of modify your diet and lifestyle.
Okay. Then what is a percentage, doctor? If it is not 100%, then what is the maximum?
So if we talk about breast cancer and the BRCA gene, there are two variants of the BRCA gene, 1 and 2. So if you have the BRCA1 mutation, there's a 80% chance, which is high. But if it's BRCA2, it goes down to 60%. So you see, there are still 20% women who are BRCA positive, but who will never develop breast cancer.
Okay, yeah. And doctor, like you also spoke about. Yeah. So doctor, you also spoke about slight changes in your breast, right? The kind of shape and all that. So is it anything to do with the nipple, as in like if you find any differences in your nipple, as in like not shape exactly, but then if there is a sort of like a pimple type or something like that around the nipple with that the other the black the entire nipple part, what I'm saying. If there is any sort of kind of heat balls or something like that, a kind of pimple type of, what does that mean?
So a few, like you said, a few of these raised, elevated things around the nipple is actually very, very normal. And again, closer to your periods, you might notice that these elevations become more prominent. If you're pregnant, you might realize that these become more prominent. So these are normal for any given like nipple type. But something that causes your nipple to invert or causes a blood-stained nipple discharge is something that should get you worried.
Okay. Thank you.
Doctor, just one more question. So the nipple area, right? Like, if it changes shape often, like it sometimes, the front part is like, it's I don't know how to say it. Like it's big, and then it just like sometimes it just becomes one amongst the other regions.
Right. So that's absolutely normal. It's normal because the nipple actually has a little bit of muscle inside it. So when it's cold or you're sexually aroused, the other nipple actually becomes hard and pointy, and other times it's soft. So these are absolutely normal ways that the nipple behaves, and there's nothing to be worried about.
Okay, thank you.
Doctor, this is Prerna.
Hi, Prerna, tell me.
Hi, I have a question. So I was also reading about this breast cancer from my end also. So somewhere I read that one of the symptoms of identifying, sorry, I joined your meeting late because I was in another meeting.
Problem.
So I had got to know that if there is a difference in the size of your breast, and that is also one of the symptoms where you need to worry. And I do see it is. So do I really need to worry about that? I generally make sure to self identifying if there is some lumps or not, but still.
So having one breast differently sized than the other is something that is very common. It's
Okay.
seen in as many as 30% of women. Okay, so that's almost 1 in 3 women will have one breast slightly different or slightly bigger, slightly smaller than the other. So you don't need to worry about that. But if it is become different recently, then you should better get it shown.
Okay. I
If
mean,
it's a sudden
what
change.
if, so I mean, I don't know how to identify if there is sudden change. Let's say that I have this observation I have done 3 years before. I mean, before that, maybe I would have never observed.
And in
Like,
3 years, has it been the same way, or has it undergone any more changes?
no, no more changes.
Then you're good.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
I asked a question in chat.
Is it common to have benign painless cysts and lumps in breasts? Very, very, very common. More common than you think. All of us have it. Some of us notice it, some of us don't.
Actually, I didn't notice. I went for a regular checkup and they saw it in the...
It's absolutely normal. So don't worry about it.
Doctor?
Yeah?
There was a thing about limiting hormone intake. What exactly, like when exactly do we intake hormones?
So when you get married and you need to, or whatever, if you're having a partner and you are having regular intercourse, but you want to avoid a pregnancy, your gynac is going to put you on something called oral contraceptive pills as one option of birth control. So, which is great. It's not harmful by itself, but we need to limit the number of years that we take it. So we can't, end up taking it for years together, because it's slightly, not very horribly, but slightly increases the risk for breast cancer. So if you've taken hormones or oral contraceptive pills for, say, a couple of years, like 3 or 4 years, maybe it's time to give it a break, look at other options like using a condom or something else, and get back to it after a break. So try and minimize that as far as possible.
Any other way of intaking hormones?
This trend is not very common in India, but in the West, the women who undergo menopause, they have a lot of these menopausal symptoms like hot flashes and dry vaginas and saggy breasts. So for these women, people used to prescribe hormones, kind of to reverse these changes, which is called hormone replacement therapy. So again, that is something, if you don't absolutely need it, once you become menopausal, it's probably best to go light on those hormones.
Okay, if someone decides not to have kids, so they'll never breastfeed, right?
Right. So, but that's only one thing. So, so when you say these things, these are modifiable risk factors, and they're very soft indications. There's nothing hard and fast. It doesn't mean that, that suppose I don't have a kid and I don't breastfeed, 100% I'm going to get breast cancer. Aisa nahi hai. It's just that if I have early kids and I breastfeed my kids, it gives me extra benefit and extra strength against breast cancer. Let's put it that way.
How late is late kids? Like how early is early and how late is it?
Good question. How early can be as early as you want it to be, but generally you should kind of, not put it off for much longer beyond, say, 33, 34 years of age. That's probably the right time to go for it if you think kids are what you want in life. But again, there's no hard and fast rule.
I was taking 35 as marrying age.
Ari, that's also cool, yeah. So other factors, then you work on your exercise, alcohol, everything else, so that this you can maaf a little bit.
So doctor, can steroid medications contribute to breast cancer because they somehow mess with the hormones and cause obesity and everything?
So steroid medications are not directly linked to breast cancer. So you need not be worried about that. But steroids are a double-edged sword, all right? So take it only if it is absolutely indicated.
So like for some allergy conditions, doctors put you on steroid medication.
Oh, those are very, very mild doses, and that's not going to affect you at all.
Okay.
So doctor, one question. So my mom, my mom has like 4 kids. Okay. So she has actually done breastfeeding and all that, but then despite all this, she actually had breast cancer.
I know. So that's unfortunate. Like I said, nothing's absolute. It's just relative. And what we can do to minimize risk. I'm really sorry for that, but
yeah. No,
I
but
hope she's okay.
Just wanted to, no, actually, we lost her during June month. It's just that since she actually did breastfeeding, and then so no, there was no history also, like maybe her family, her mom, her aunt, nothing. So how is this, like, how did she get a breast cancer? Is there any possibilities, anything like that?
Nothing. Yeah,
I mean, it's just unfortunate.
It's just unfortunate, and there is so much we don't know about why cancer happens even today, that I'm kind of surprised you brought this up, because I was sitting in OPD today and I was seeing my patients, and I saw this 24-year-old guy with lung cancer in stage 4. Okay. And I was supposed to break the news to him. And his only question was, dude, I don't even smoke. How did I get this wrong? And I was stumped. I had no answer. And unfortunately, even your question is a little bit like that, that science simply hasn't developed that much today anywhere in the world to tell you exactly why this person had cancer. And I understand that all of us, like human beings are built that way, that we feel better when we know the reason for something and we have something to blame it on. But sometimes you just don't. And I'm really sorry for your loss.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for answering, doctor. Yeah.
So Prachi is asking, if someone has a kid but didn't breastfeed, does that cause higher risk? No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Doctor, are we running out of time?
Doctor, you didn't answer the question about
the vaccine.
The infection. Yeah.
So the vaccine is been made available in India, and unfortunately, it's still not a part of a national program as such, but it's very, very strongly recommended that the HPV vaccine is taken by all girls and women between 9 and 26 years of age, and Indian boys too, between 9 and 15 years of age. That's what it's been approved for. And I would strongly recommend that you take it, because cervix cancer is still something that is very much a part of what our society deals with on the whole, and the vaccine can actually prevent it. We have one chance at preventing a cancer, and it's not that big a deal. So yeah, Prachi, if that answers your question, then it's something that I would recommend.
I think she asked where we could get it, like
any hospital. So you can approach any of these big, the corporate hospitals, or any government hospital will have an HPV vaccine to give you. And if you go to a government hospital, it's almost as good as free.
So it's only recommended for 9 to 26.
9 to 26.
But you can take it later also, right?
Yes. But the benefit of it goes down.
Okay.
There's actually one. Sorry, yeah. What?
Is this dependent on sexual intercourse or number of partners or something?
Yes. So if you have had multiple partners, your risk of cervical cancer goes up a little bit. So does your risk of getting a lot of STDs. So if that's the scene, then definitely you should be thinking about getting the vaccine. It's a smart thing to do.
But otherwise, if you're married in your 30s, then you probably can skip on this.
That ship has sailed then.
Okay.
Yeah. So, before we wind up, there's just one point that I'd like to make. As somebody who advocates for cancer and sees cancer on a day-to-day basis, there's a lot of stigma associated with it, okay? Especially breast cancer, not so much because it's family history, etc. But things like lung cancer, etc. It's like, we all know smoking causes lung cancer. And it goes like, you got lung cancer, dude, you deserved it. You smoked so much. And there's a lot of this blame game stigma associated with it, which is really the thing that's setting us back. For that matter, even with breast cancer, any other kind of cancer, we call ourselves educated and forward, but even in our homes, we talk about people with cancer like, tumhe pata hai, unke mataji ko cancer ho gaya, which is like all hush hush and let's not tell the world. we need to break that chain. We need to stop getting embarrassed about it. The fights become pretty personal now. If you take 1 in 9 as the number, it's like 1 in 9 of us are going to have it some point in their lives. It's become like diabetes and BP. हम लोग तो सबको बोलते फिरते कि हाँ मुझे तो diabetes है, मैं ये नहीं खाऊंगी, वो नहीं खाऊंगी. It needs to be the same about cancer. You need to be not chill, but you need to be a little bit, pragmatic about it. Talk about it, let people know about it, and it shouldn't become such a hush-hush topic. I think that's the first barrier we need to break if we want to fight this, because the material, the arms, the armamentarium is all there in India. You can get the best possible treatment, but what is not there is talking about it enough. So thank you, Sanjeet, for organizing this and being so comfortable talking about breasts and nipples and cancer, and it was so great having all of you here. I really enjoyed myself. And I hope you guys got what you wanted from the talk.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Yeah, Doctor. Thank you.
Thank you so much for answering so many questions.
Doctor, I have a question.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Can having a heavy breast size can increase the chances of breast cancer?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't work that way. So don't worry about it.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Doctor, by the way, are we going to get the recording of the session?
I think Sanjeet will be able to answer that. He's nodding his head. So yes. And I was just searching for the breast self-examination video. I'm really sorry it's not on this laptop, but I've shared my email ID. So one of you just ping it and I'll email it across to you all so that you all can share it.
So Doctor, where is your email ID?
It's on the chat. And 1 second, let me just go to the last slide so that it's there for everyone. Here.